Hello and welcome to the Film Ireland podcast. In this episode, Farren talks to Kieron J. Walsh about his film, The Racer, which tells the story of sporting highs and lows of the Tour de France. The Racer is in Irish cinemas from the 11th of December.
Thank you for tuning into our podcast. This is Film Ireland and I have Kieron J. Walsh here to talk about his latest film, The Racer, and we might get some more gossip out of him as well. So, congrats on the film, by the way, for a start.
Thank you very much.
Wow, it's an amazing looking production, and it's a co-production, Lux co-production, am I right?
Yeah, that's right.
Pan-European?
Yeah, it's three countries, Belgium, Luxembourg and Ireland.
Your leading actor is a Belgian actor, am I right?
That's correct, yeah. I mean, Belgium is the home of cycling, really, professional cycling. People kind of assume because it's the Tour de France that it's France that is the home of cycling, but it's actually Belgium. It's actually Flanders, which the kind of Dutch-speaking part of Belgium is the real home of cycling. I mean, it's in their blood there. It's their national sport. So it seemed apt that our lead character be Belgian, be Flemish, you know.
First off, tell me, where did the idea come from originally? I think it was Kieron Cassidy originated it.
That's right, yeah. Kieron Cassidy, who's a bit of a sports fanatic and a documentary maker, as you probably know. He was intrigued about stories he'd been hearing about the time the Tour de France came to Ireland a couple of years later. Stories from people who worked in the hotels about riders jogging up and down the corridors in the middle of the night, or the sounds of bikes whirring in hotel rooms in the early hours of the morning. And this was intriguing. What the hell was going on? Is this how they train? And he knew that wasn't how they trained. And there's a book called End of the Road, written by Alistair Fotheringham, which is basically that 98 tour. They thought it was going to be the end of the Tour de France, completely is going to finish, right? And in actual fact, they were so scared of this that they put in a lot of the organizers of the tour put in a lot of structures to try and stamp the drugs out completely. I mean, it got really strict about it. A lot of testing, a lot of resistance from the riders who went on strike and stuff, but a lot of resistance. And they even brought in a blood passport. Paul McQuaid brought in the blood passport, who was the head of the UCI at the time. And however, the next 7 years, Lance Armstrong won the Tour de France.
Yeah, and everyone said stuff and nobody believed anything, but it was being called by a lot of people for a long time. Yeah. What's interesting as well is this story. I would say it's reductive to call it a sports film. It's not a sports film. It's a film set in the sports world.
Yeah, I would thoroughly agree with that opinion. It's a character study about a guy who happens to be a cyclist, but he could have been a footballer, or he could have been a mountain climber, or it does happen to be set in the world of cycling, which is probably, well, the Tour de France is probably, arguably, it's the most difficult sport in the world. So it really is an examination of this character and how much this second fiddle, this support rider, how much he's going to sacrifice his life for the winners, for the champions. And that is what I found intriguing. The level of sacrifice that goes on and the danger that these guys put themselves into for little or no praise outside of the world of cycling. Nobody really knows the domestiques that much, you know. If you're a big cycling fan, you'll know them, but
of course,
everybody knows Lance Armstrong, everybody probably knows Pantani, everybody knows Stephen Roach, and you know what I mean, the champions, the guys who win, but nobody knows how to get them there. And I found that intriguing.
There's very few that kind of area of also-rans, you know, as you say, all these people who keep all the other guys up in the air, who get all the glory.
Yeah.
And but also the intrigue, the fact that, I mean, basically the character's on a kind of possible last legs of his tour. He's 39 years of age, which is like ancient in cycling, I think. The average is 35, isn't it? Something like that.
Yeah, about that. Yeah, I mean there are some exceptions, but yes, it's old for any sports person, but particularly that sport. My God, that sport is so punishing on your body. I don't know how anybody could carry on. You know.
Personally, what was the hook for you? What did Kieron sell you that you went, yeah, I really would love to develop this?
Well, actually, I think it wasn't at the time, but during the lead up to shooting the film, and actually the writing of it, to be honest. Where I found myself connecting most with the story of these guys, these journeymen, these domestiques, coming to this point in their lives where they don't know what's going to happen next. I kind of felt that is almost like the life of a film director, actually. You know, I mean, a film director, you know, you make a film, and then you when you're making a film, you're thrown into a situation for 3 months of shooting and prep and everything. You are up close and personal with people that you don't really know that well, and you've got to really kind of gel with them, and you know, we're all working together, sometimes away from home, and then at the end of that, it all stops, and that family that you've just been introduced to falls away, and you're left with the material.
Yeah. And
you're away from your own family, your own blood, making this thing, and you're isolated. And as a director, you really are kind of on your own. You may be supported well by producers and whatnot, but you're really on your own, and you kind of carry the can, you know, in this instance. And then when you do the film, you really don't know whether there's going to be another film around the corner. Like, it's such a precarious business. So, you know, although age doesn't necessarily come into it when making films, because it's not really, I mean, you've got to be physically fit, of course, but, you know, it's not like a sport. But I did feel an affinity with Dom, you know, reaching that crossroads in his life and thinking, what am I going to do next? What's around the corner? So that's really what I connected with it, because I'm not a massive sports fan myself, you know. But then again, I look at films like Raging Bull, for example. That's not really about boxing. I mean, the guy does more fighting outside of the ring than he does inside of the ring. You know, he fights with his brother and his wife and everybody else. So I find that, and like films like, strange kind of comparison, but like Whiplash, you know, is a guy who's obsessed with being the best drummer in the world, you know, and he's being beaten around by his trainer, like his coach. I think that intensity really interested me in this film. So that's where it came from.
Yeah, it reminded me of any other film. It was actually The Wrestler.
The Wrestler, yeah, absolutely. The Wrestler is definitely a reference. I would say Rocky even has got a reference there as well.
Yeah, well, it's a darker film. It's as I said, I felt it's as much a metaphor for life as anything else.
It is.
And how we make these choices, and we know we're all doomed in the end. And that, I thought there was something quite honest about the character. He wasn't lovable all the time. It was this beautiful honesty about where he felt he was. I mean, you also give him that big moment where he's every reason to walk away and try and do something that's not what this is. But I don't want to say any more about the film, because let's find out let them watch it themselves and find out.
Sure. Well, I mean, I actually did, you know, speak to some professional writers and ex-professional writers about the various different things, conundrums that they would come across whilst they're on a grand tour, whether it be a Giro or a Vuelta or a Tour de France, and really nothing gets in the way. Honestly, it's, you know, I mean, that's the reality of it. You know, it's terrible, but that's how serious they are about it. You know.
Well, it's also very strange that your film was almost like a Tour de France, because you were flitting back and forth between 2 or 3 different countries. Tell me, what was that like as for a production? I know a few guys who've done it, and it's tough, but it's amazing. I couldn't see where Luxembourg was. I know you did a few locations abroad, but a lot of them were here. I recognised a few.
All of the exteriors were done in Ireland, apart from the very last shot, which was done in Luxembourg. But the very last little shot, which is when the tour is back in France, kind of thing.
Okay.
Know? All of the interiors, well, not all of them, nearly all of the interiors were done in Luxembourg. So the hotel rooms, a couple of the bars, even though, because there's plenty of Irish bars in Luxembourg, believe it or not. So the bars and a couple of restaurants or whatever, most of the interiors were done in Luxembourg.
There's plenty of Irish in Luxembourg. I have a lot of friends over there.
Yeah, there is. And there's a healthy fit. There's a couple of Irish people working in the film industry over there as well. So we worked on this film, actually, you know. But it was, I mean, broadly it broke down like this. The 50% of the shoot was done in Luxembourg. The other 50% was done in Ireland, and nearly all of the post-production was done in Belgium. So it kind of divided up quite nicely. I mean, look, in reality, from a production point of view, it would have been much easier to shoot the entire film in Ireland, actually. But, you know, it's a European film in the true sense of the word. It's not like a Euro pudding where, you know, you cast this person because you're getting money from there, you cast this person because you're getting money from there. It actually organically worked as a European production, because the Tour de France is a pan-European event, and the teams are made up of people mostly, in those days it was mostly from Europe, but now it's from all over the world. But there are a lot of them are European teams, so and now it's multilingual. Whereas before '98, before Lance Armstrong came into the Tour de France, all the communication was through French. And the authorities of France went kind of crazy when Lance Armstrong started doing his press conferences in English. They were really pissed off with him, That's how much they cling to Tour de France and the French ownership of it. Believe it or not, the last French person to win the Tour de France was Bernard Hinault in 1986.
That's a while.
That's a long time ago. That's the last French person to win it, So it's changed a lot in the last 30 years,
And it survived the drug thing. But what I loved about the drug aspect was it was thrown in without any moralizing. It was simply par for the course. And you kind of understood it or felt their attitude towards it, because we know it's been so prevalent in the sport. I think some people be even saying, why don't they just put drugs into the sport and have them advertised in the new pharmaceutical companies?
There was a suggestion to have the drug Olympics one year, wasn't there? Where everybody could just take whatever they want. And I mean, that's the deaths that occurred as a result of EPO cannot be denied. At least 20.
Yeah,
people.
of course.
I mean, they went to bed and never woke up. And it hasn't been absolutely definitively proved that it's EPO, but these are young men, you know what I mean? Who go to bed and don't wake up, who have heart attacks.
Yeah.
And they were taking drugs. So put those things together, I mean, that's why you cannot allow something like that to happen. You cannot allow them to, that's why they have to get rid of it, because it's dangerous, And we all know that sports people are so competitive, they will do whatever it takes to win. And that's what we've got to protect them from. And that's why, and in those days it was very cavalier taking of drugs. The crime was not taking the drugs, the crime was getting caught. In the film, I wanted to just sort of show that that was the reality. In fact, you could take EPO back in the 90s as long as your hematocrit level remained under 50%, which means your red blood cell count remained under 50%. If it exceeded 50%, then you were banned, or they were fined or whatever. But if it was below that, even though you'd taken the EPO, you could get away with it.
Wow.
Now nowadays you can't take it at all. It's much more strict. But so and the Tour de France has always had some kind of stimulant involved in it. Back 100 years ago, they were drinking brandy on the bikes or whiskey or anything to take the pain away, because it's all about alleviate
endurance. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's interesting in itself, is that, as you say, there was always something, and the drugs have changed. And then even the arguments in court were the fact that I took such an antibiotic and they could trace it back that. And the politics of trying to get away with these things is huge in the background.
Yeah, I mean, it's a science, you know what I mean? It's a business as well. I mean, that guy Ferrari, who was responsible for Lance Armstrong's success, arguably, he was like a Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein, and he really was. He had fine-tuned how to do this thing, how to do it, and he was the best in the world. And Lance Armstrong is still fighting fit, so he had the best doctor looking after him, giving him the best quality EPO and the best quality amphetamine or whatever it is he's giving him. A lot of the other guys couldn't afford Dr. Ferrari, so
yeah. Ferrari Stein.
Yeah, still,
Tell me a bit about the filming itself, the exteriors with James Mader and that. Complex, some gorgeous shots, some beautiful openings up near the canister, the pepper canister in town, and then around Wicklow, I think it was.
Yeah.
But tell us about a complex shoot.
Yeah, I mean, look, we shot the film in 28 days.
Wow.
Yeah, which is a tough call. And the thing that was always looming, because we did all the Luxembourg stuff first, and then we went back to Ireland. So all of the racing was going to be done in Ireland. And it was just terrifying, the prospect of it. But actually, we were so prepared. We'd storyboarded and we pre-visualized a lot of the stunts and the racing sequences. And we were prepared for coverage. We had designed this rig. Paul San designed this rig, which we ended up calling the Tour de San, which was basically a truck with a cantilevered pole with a camera on the end of it that we could swoop in, down in amongst the riders, low, high, wherever we wanted to go without endangering them. We had onboard cameras called Osmos, which were strapped to the bikes that could shoot little bits and pieces of the bikes and the riders. And then we had drones in the air, which were basically emulating cameras, or emulating helicopters, which would have been used at the time to cover the tour, but also doing some more interesting stuff as drones. And then there was also cameras on the side of the various different, like, static cameras on the side of the road and stuff like that. So we had plenty of coverage for this kind of stuff, and we were worried about getting it done. We were also worried about crashes happening, and we got very lucky. We only had one crash, which was a pretty bad one actually, and the guys, actors and extras, ended up in hospital as a result of it. But it ended up in the film, so
I saw that.
Real crash, yeah. So.
Your Ben-Hur moment without a death.
That's right. So there was a lot of thoughts and preparation that went into that. The irony of the situation is that the stuff that we did in Luxembourg, like, we were in real hotel rooms. There was no money for sets. We had real hotel rooms, small hotel rooms, and sometimes we'd have 30 people in a small hotel room between the cast and the crew shooting this thing. And the irony of it is there was more sweat coming out of those hotel rooms than there was when we were actually doing the cycling in Ireland, so yeah. And they were tough. They were very, very tough. So it was extremely arduous. The shoot was really hard, but James was brilliant. We had a fantastic location manager, Donna Brady, who was just, he cleared some of the most amazing locations for us, all around the Pepper Canister Church and stuff. It's incredible to get that access. And we actually shot, the tour did go through there in 98. And Wicklow Gap and Sally Gap, the tour went through those places as well. So we were going back to the scenes of the crime, really, and recreating it, except for not half as much money as the Tour de France had,
So 1998, a funny period to shoot. Was there worry about missing things and having a bit of anachronisms in there?
Yeah,
It was all down to phones.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is, making it's technically a period film, but making a period film in the recent past is much more difficult because there's not a huge difference between now and then. But when you examine it, there's obvious ones. There wasn't a proliferation of mobile phones in 98, far from it. Lynn, Dr. Lynn, played by Tara Lee, she holds up the phone like, and this what is this thing, and how do I use it, kind of thing, and payphones were the means of communication. And in Ireland, we had pretty dodgy payphones with push button A and push button B and all that. There was obviously the clothes and the hairstyles, but and things like, we had to be very selective in some of the locations that we decided to shoot in. The original Grand Départ happened on O'Connell Street. That was where the race originally started. We couldn't shoot there, not just because we couldn't shut down O'Connell Street, but there's a spire there that wasn't there before. There's Lewis's going up and down that wasn't there before. There's square trees, and the floozy of the jacuzzi is gone. So it had changed quite a bit. But Merrion Square, thankfully, hasn't changed that much at all. It's still a quintessential Georgian square, so it was perfect for it, and not much has changed up in Sally Gap or anywhere like that, So that, and with the music, I think music does an awful lot to set a tone for a film, and our soundtrack featured what I believe is probably the quintessential 90s band, Primal Scream, who top and tail the film. But also I worked with a composer in Belgium called Hannes de Maar, and my reference point was Kraftwerk, who had written an album called Tour de France Soundtracks.
Yes.
So we wanted to get
a nice sound that was. Yeah, it was just the right one, I felt. Yeah. And tell me, VFX, was there much, and was it very helpful?
Very.
I would have thought it would have been.
We're talking to mostly film people here, I guess, but the recreation of the opening stages of the Tour de France, where there was probably more than 10,000 people on the streets watching this thing. Now, we could afford 200 extras. That's what we could get,
Yeah.
And we needed to fill the entire stretch all the way from the Dáil, all the way up to the Pepper Canister Church. So we relied on crowd duplication and VFX to do that, So there's various different areas where we put people in afterwards. And extended the length of the peloton, the riders. So instead of having 60 riders, it looked like we had 180 riders. That really was the extent of it, to be honest, you know. And that might sound simple, but actually it's quite complex. I mean, there was rubbing stuff out and taking out things that might, anachronisms and stuff like that, you know. But really, that was the donkey work. And, you know, it's not a film that you look at and you go like, wow, the VFX are amazing, because it's just trying to...
That's what you would, yeah.
Trying to create,
you don't want anyone saying that.
No, but I mean, like, it's not like a special effects film, like a
of course
superhero movie or whatever. It's a film that we're trying to recreate a time period, you know. In fact, I was looking at The Crown the other night, and when they went to Australia, the Charles and Di went to Australia, and you know, they recreated, I think it was the 80s when they went to Australia, or maybe it was the 90s, but there was a lot of crowd duplication there, but it was really, really well done. So it's become, I think it's become quite sophisticated, the technology to do crowd duplication now.
Do you think, though, it's also created a kind of a cinematography that comes with it that still creates this kind of illusory fairy tale sense of the past? I don't feel the dirt in the air with some CGI or some VFX.
Yeah, no, I think I would agree with you there. I mean, my brief to the guys was, look, you know, I just wanted to look like real. You know what I mean? I wanted to look realistic. You know,
yeah.
The shots might be a little bit, because you know, some of the shots we did, like for example, we had a drone over the Pepper Canister Church, you know, directly overhead. You know, that wasn't the kind of shot that was being done by the helicopters back in '98. They couldn't get down that low, and just wouldn't cover it like that. They cover it in a more traditional manner. So the shots might have been a little bit more creative, but the crowd had to look real. That was my brief, and everything had to look real. I mean, it's a gritty, behind the scenes look at the Tour de France in '98. That it really is that, you know, and it's an examination of this this domestique. So there's a gritty realism there, which I didn't want to shy away from.
Tell us, Kieron, where can people see this film? Where they need to go to make sure they catch it?
Okay, well,
it's been a tough year with COVID. You missed out on your South by Southwest screening and a few others, I'm sure.
Yeah, this has been the film has got a kicking because of COVID. It got released in Belgium quite wide and was second to Tenet in the box office over there, which is pretty good.
Fantastic.
But you know, the cinemas I think are closed down there now. But that was last September. It got released and it did quite well. But and it was released in America later in September. Again, difficult because a lot of the cinemas were closed. A lot of the cinemas that in places that would have been interested in this film, particularly interested in this film, like, you know, California and New York, there was no cinemas open. So those people didn't get a chance to see it in the cinema. So it was a day and date release there as well. It's coming out in the UK on the 18th, day and date release, and will be released to whatever cinemas are open in the UK. Here it's, first of all, getting like I think it's a 2-week window before it comes out in the UK. So it's in cinemas at the minute. Unfortunately, it hasn't got to as many cinemas as I would like it to have got to, because of a lot of re-releases, a lot of films like Love Actually and Elf, and these Christmas feel-good movies that have been shunted back into the cinemas. And
it's a tough time for that kind of film.
God, yeah, I mean, it really is. So it's on in the Lighthouse, and it's on in the IFI at the minute, and then it's on in lots of other cinemas outside of Dublin. So I think it's about 10 or 12 cinemas outside of Dublin as well.
Yeah. Well, we'll make sure we get any more details on our site as well. It's been great talking to you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Kieron.
Cheers, Paul.
Cheers.
Bye-bye now.